English language webinar. That's why you need to
London is the
sit.
capital of Great Britain.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you need to prepare for it. So, welcome to webinar that called FMI certification, a guarantee of your financial modeling skills. Today we'll talk about the Financial Modeling Institute, thanks to which you can confirm that you are able to build financial models. To review the secrets and various interesting points of the university, with special guests join to the webinar room. It's Julian Capillari, Business Development Manager. Good evening, Julian.
Good evening, Roman.
And Tim Benson, Content and Grading Team. Good evening, Tim.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. And our online university is represented by Alexander Valtsev, CEO SF Education. Alexander, good evening.
Hello.
And me, marketing analyst and representative Roman Pavlov. So we're all set to prepare to launch of the presentation, and we are ready to ignition on. Let's start, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Roman, for that introduction. So welcome, everyone. So I'm going to try to say this. I'll do my best. Dobry večer. I know it is the evening for you in Russia. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are in Canada, and so it's around noon for Tim and I. Can everyone hear me okay? I just want to check. Everything good? The slides are up. Everyone can hear me okay?
Julian, everything's okay, because when something goes wrong, the people just tell us.
Awesome. Fantastic, Roman. Thank you so much for letting us know. So thank you again for joining us today. I know these are extremely challenging times around the world due to the pandemic. So thank you so much for investing the time, being interested in developing your financial modeling ability, and for joining this webinar from the Financial Institute. So I am going to tell you a lot of great things about the Financial Institute today. The first question I have for you is how familiar you are with the Financial Institute. So Roman, if you wouldn't mind just issuing that poll that I put in the
The poll's already launched.
Perfect.
And we have some results, Julian.
Perfect. Would you mind just telling me what the top result is?
Top result is now I am unfamiliar with the FMI. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that.
No.
But 22% it is I am interested in registering for an FMI exam.
Perfect. Well, that's fantastic. So that's great. So we're going to tell you a lot about the FMI today. In that case, we'll take our time. We'll explain the mission, we'll explain the vision, and you will have everything you know to decide if the Financial Modeling Institute's certifications are right for you. So let's get started. So today we're going to give you a bit of an FMI overview. We're going to talk a bit about the exam format. That'll take about 20 minutes, to 20 to 25 minutes. Then we will go into a little bit about the level 1 exam, what a good exam looks like, a bit about how to prepare, and then you can there will be a Q&A at the end. However, don't hesitate to ask questions as you go. Just put any questions in chat. Alexander and Roman will collect those. There will be a couple stops for questions as we go, and so we'll address questions at that point. Perfect. How does that sound? Any interruptions so far? We're good?
Yes, if you could speak a little bit slower.
Sure, absolutely. I am happy to. Absolutely. So my name is Julian Kupalari. I am a level 1 AFM holder from the FMI. So I'm the business development manager at the FMI. My role is to build partnerships, such as this partnership that we have with SF Education and Alexander and Roman. As I said, I also hold the level 1 certification from the Financial Modeling Institute. And I took that certification and I liked it so much that I joined the company. We are also joined today by Tim Benson, who is a member of our content and grading team. Tim, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Julian.
Awesome. Tim, would you like to explain to the audience a little bit about what you do at the FMI?
Sure. I've actually been involved in the FMI basically since its inception. And one of the roles that I play in this is in terms of putting together the content for the financial modeling programs, and also very involved in grading the exams. So have a very good sense of what people do well on an exam and some of the areas where they maybe don't do as well as they potentially could. So we'll share some of those with you later today.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. So now we'll get into an overview of what the Financial Modeling Institute does. So the FMI, or the Financial Modeling Institute, was founded in 2017, and its primary business is to conduct rigorous exams that validate financial modeling proficiency. So it's really kind of based off the CFA program. I assume a lot of you here have heard of the CFA program.
Yep.
And like the CFA program, it has 3 levels of financial modeling certification. So it's like the CFA program, but for financial modeling. And we have a very close partnership with the CFA Institute, and I will talk about that later. So in terms of the vision of FMI, it is very helpful to look at the mission and the values of it. So what we do is we seek to represent the interests of the global financial modeling community through the delivery of world-class exams and accreditation programs. And we're really here to elevate financial modeling around the world. So we set a global standard, and we have an internationally recognized financial modeling certification, much like the CFA program. So how do the certifications work? Well, they're slightly different than the CFA, and I'd like to direct your attentions to points 1 to 3. Unlike the CFA, each level in the FMI is recognized as its own certification. So you are not required to achieve level 3 to hold a certification from the FMI. You can only go as far as you would like to. Does that make sense? Are there any questions on that, Alexander or Roman?
Still, there is no questions from chat and from us because it's just interesting information for us, and we are seeing it.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, just let me know. So in terms of what each of the different levels tests. So again, I hold the level 1 AFM. What that did was tested my ability to build a dynamic and flexible 3-statement forecast model of a company. So I achieved that certification, and it opened a ton of doors for me. My modeling has improved drastically. The level 2 CFM builds on the skills tested in the AFM and introduces a little more complexity, a little more depth in topic, and a little more real-life scenarios. Finally, the Master Financial Modeler. This level is still in development. It's planned to be for the best financial modelers in the world, maybe the top 10% of financial modelers in the world. So we're really excited to tell you more information about that in the future. In terms of how the level 1 compares to the level 2, we have this slide here. These green buckets are what are tested on the level 1 exam, what are needed in order to build a flexible 3-statement model of a company. These blue buckets are the new topics that are introduced in level 2. So the FMI is not just the internal team that you see, members like Tim and I. The FMI is built on a global collaboration of a ton of financial modeling, accounting, and other business experts around the world. The FMI represents the interests, the financial modeling interests of these parties that you see around this circle. And each of these parties contributes different things to the FMI, whether it be in the form of grading, helping to proctor our exams, helping to design our exams, and helping to contribute thought leadership. And again, here's a great point to speak a bit about our relationship with the CFA Institute. The CFA Institute is a very big supporter of the FMI. Recently, they've given us license to go around the world and to run webinars and events with the CFA societies. We've partnered with about 30 CFA societies around the world, including CFA Society Russia, and we run a webinar for them. So that's just an example of our partnership there. So people often ask me, how is the FMI different? You know, should I take this certification? Should I take that certification or that training program? Well, so one of the key points of differentiation for the FMI is that the FMI does not conduct any of its own training, any of its own paid training. We do have resources, which I will get into later, but we don't conduct any of our own training. And the reason that we do that is so that we can be objective in the evaluation of financial modeling ability. So the entire FMI process is focused on delivering transparent and fair and objective validations of financial modeling ability. If you would like training for the FMI certifications, the FMI holds a network of approved training providers around the world, such as SF Education. And what these approved training providers have to do is they have to have an employee on their staff that has passed an FMI exam so that they know the materials. From there, this training firm is an approved training provider and they can train candidates for the FMI exams. They can allow the FMI to be independent in its evaluation of financial modeling ability. And they are part of the FMI community and can give us feedback at any time and contribute in a variety of ways. So here's our list of approved training providers. And of course, you can see SF Education in the bottom list. This list is, of course, alphabetical. So in terms of the great reasons to take the FMI certifications, I'm just going to talk a bit about some of our candidates that benefited extremely from the level 1 AFM certification. So we have Alexander, who's from Toronto, Canada, where I'm from. And he actually took the AFM certification to validate his strong financial modeling ability. And when he was interviewed for positions, he was actually chosen because the employer knew that they could trust that he was a strong financial modeler. Zweli, on the other hand, from Johannesburg, he was taking a CFA designation. He was in a finance job that he quite liked, and he wanted to move up to the next levels. So he used the AFM exam as a way to test and see where he had to improve his financial modeling in order to be better at his career. And then Jiaming is an extremely passionate financial modeler. She loves all things modeling and wanted to take the AFM to see if she was good enough and see how she can improve and just continue to improve at financial modeling. So,
Julian, in this spot of the presentation, in this pause, can I ask you just one question from chat?
Absolutely.
Chat, thank you. Our spectator asked, do you need a specific background to successfully pass 3 exams? No?
That's a fantastic question. And the answer is no. We don't require you to have any work experience or any specific background. Anyone in the world can take the AFM exam. We'll talk more about the technical requirements that you might need, like a working computer and internet and stuff like that. But no, anyone can take it. There's no prerequisite.
Anyone can take it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Roman. So in terms of the level 2, it's very similar to the benefits that people receive from level 1, but again, they're more elite financial modelers. So Andreas in Greece, he owns his own financial modeling consulting practice. So the level 2 helped him to validate his financial modeling skills and helped him to compete with some of the bigger firms that he was competing against for financial modeling contracts like EY, PwC, etc. Durham Brown, on the other hand, in Australia, he, again, wanted, very similar to Zweli, wanted the CFM to develop his financial modeling skills to see where he needed to improve in order to move forward in his finance career. And then Maria Angelica, very similar to Jiaming on the last page, extremely passionate financial modeler, loves all things financial modeling, and wanted to further develop her skills and test her abilities. The other people that the FMI is for, it's obviously for the candidates who achieve the certifications and pass the exams, but it is also for employers around the world. Employers mitigate their risk in hiring when they hire someone with an FMI certification because they know that this individual will have an extremely strong financial modeling ability. The next aspect is employers benefit from talent development. They'll often bring us in. Firms like PwC in St. Petersburg and Moscow will often bring us in to run private exams for their teams. And this will in turn force their teams to study, force their teams to develop their financial modeling skills, and they know that they will benefit from that. And then the final thing is employers benefit from being affiliated with the FMI because they will benefit from some of the thought leadership and the network like we've seen in those previous slides. In terms of our candidate demographics, the FMI candidates are extremely impressive. They represent an international group. I think we ran an report today and we have candidates from almost 80 countries around the world. 45% of our candidates hold other very difficult to achieve certifications. And the average age of our candidates is currently 32 years old. Do we have any more questions at that point?
Yes, Julian, thanks a lot for your part of this presentation. And yes, we have 2 questions. Pavel asks, does FMI certification apply for commercial real estate valuation?
So that is a great question. So, and maybe Tim can help me with that, but my preliminary answer is that the skills you'll learn in modeling will be applicable to any Excel models that you build. We know a lot of people who, for example, have portfolio positions, and actually some of our ATPs teach real estate modeling only, and they do recommend that people take the AFM exam just because the level 1 is so general. Building a 3-statement model of a company is so useful that almost everyone, even people who work in Excel but not necessarily in financial modeling, will benefit from developing these skills in themselves. Tim,
thank you, Julian.
You're welcome. Tim, do you have anything to add on that?
No.
Perfect. All right.
So,
awesome. Yeah.
There's another question by Igor. He said, how can FMI benefit for it's actually for operations consulting? So if you work in like a Big 4 or Big 3 and you do operations consulting, how does it help?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I'll say is that a lot of our candidates are from the Big 4, maybe even close to 40%. I would say 40 to 50%. And so yes, absolutely, you will benefit. A lot of accountings benefit. Just the ability to plan an Excel model better will get you a lot of the way. And
actually, Roman already answered it in text, but what sort of level of English, like English command, would you recommend? Is it supposed to be like intermediate or higher?
That's
maybe alt.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's ultimately Excel based, and the other beauty of the exam is you'll write it in your own Excel. So you can write it in. I'm sure I assume there's a Russian version of Excel. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you could write it in that. The thing is, you'll need to, and we will go through this. You'll need to read the exam case in English, like the CFA, which is only available in English. You'll need to read the exam case in English. So we'll look through that document later. Given that question, we'll look through it a bit more slowly and a bit more detail, so that you can make the decision for yourself if you think it's attainable. And I'm interested to hear your feedback on what you think about the difficulty level.
Julian, I'm sorry, just to be more precise, what level of English language should have students to pass FMI exam? Because for CFA, we usually tell that it's necessary at least intermediate just to read information. But the level C1 is much better to feel more comfortable and to feel more guaranteed, more strong in that.
That's a great question. Tim, do you have any thoughts on that? Because
I think view this to be very similar to sort of CFA level. the exam instructions, case study, and the financial statements that you're provided will all be in English. To Julian's point, if you are working on using Russian Excel, that's no problem, but it is an English-based exam. And so intermediate English, I think, is great. And if that's what you guys recommend for the CFA exam, I would do exactly the same thing for this perspective.
I would actually suggest that it's because I've seen the FMI exam. It's a bit easier than CFA for cognitive abilities, because in the CFA you should actually, like, there are tricky questions and then you have to know a lot of terminology, and here it's more like, so you have you just basically need to know the elements of the balance sheet, and like a lot of the things are just terminology, and if you know it, you don't need to be able to read Shakespeare in the original. It's not that difficult. It's probably easier than CFA for understanding.
And there's great examples of sample exams on the FMI website. So if people are in any doubt, that's an easy thing to look. And if you're comfortable with that, great. If not, that will help you select. Anyways, Julian, we should probably keep moving forward because we've got a lot of stuff that we want to cover off here.
Perfect. Okay, so now
look, it's a new consumer recommendation that's said Alexander that FMI it's much easier than CFA. New consumer recommendation. You got it. Take it.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. I think we can go further. Julian.
Awesome. So, okay. So the FMI exam. So I'll talk about the exam now. So each of our exams is 4 hours long. All of the exams are based in Excel. So you're actually working in Excel to build a financial model. There is no multiple choice in any of our exams. The exams are very practical. They'll actually test your ability. And as a result, each exam needs to be manually graded by a member of the FMI team. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The exams are also closed book. So you will have no access to external resources, other internet websites or books or anything like that during the exam. And then finally, the exams are supervised or proctored. So there is someone watching you as you complete your exam to ensure that there is no cheating or violation of the code of conduct. We were running in-person exams at the FMI until October 2020. You can see we had a center in Moscow. After 2020 and due to the pandemic, we switched to a virtual exam format. So we're extremely excited about it. All our 2021 exams are currently scheduled to be virtual exams. In terms of, just one last thing on this slide. Again, we now have candidates from over 70 countries writing the exams. So we're just so excited about this virtual format because you can write from anywhere in the world. In terms of what you need to write in the virtual format, you need to provide your own computer, your own internet, your own webcam, your own version of Microsoft Excel, and it needs to be Excel later than 2010, and your own access to a quiet, distraction-free space. So these proctored exams are supervised. These exams are supervised just like the in-person exams, and they maintain that same level of rigor that the FMI tries to uphold. In terms of what you'll receive on exam day, in your browser, so in Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, whatever browser that you use, you will have the exam case, which will show you, and that's where you'll need to know English to get through it and understand it. And you will also be able to download an Excel file, which we'll also show you. And that Excel file will have the information that you need to build your model. In terms of how the exams are graded in a 3-step process. So first, the exams are manually graded by 2 graders around the world. From there, there's a peer review to ensure accuracy between those 2 grades and check where there were any differences. And finally, there's a pass or fail decision made by that 2nd grader. If a decision is difficult, if an exam is on the borderline, there is a third step where a committee discusses that exam and makes a final decision. What happens when you pass or fail? What happens with your results, after your exam? So all results are communicated within 10 weeks of your exam date. You will know if you passed or failed. If you passed, congratulations, you will be added to the FMI candidate directory on our website. You will be mailed a physical certificate. You will be sent a digital verification badge that can appear on your LinkedIn and is authorized. And you will be permitted to use AFM or CFM after your name in signatures. For candidates who are not successful on exam day, nothing to worry about. Here's what is available to you. You have the option to retake the exam at a significantly reduced fee. You also have the option, and this is a great option that not enough people take advantage of, to schedule a 30-minute exam review call with a member of the grading committee. And they will walk you through your exam, show you everywhere where you made a mistake and how to improve on that mistake. And that is just such an exceptional resource to improve your financial modeling ability.
Julian, I'm so sorry, but I just wanted to ask how many times students can retake a repass exam, maybe 3 or 4 times in a year, just for example?
That's a great question. There is no limit on it. So you could retake, you could be in every sitting. I don't obviously recommend that because you want to take some time to refresh and practice, but there is no limit. You can write as many times as you want.
Thanks a lot, because I know some persons who pass CFA, then how as they go to the work, pass CFA, goes to work, pass CFA, goes to work, day by day, month by month, for example.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
No, you're welcome, and you're free to do that. So in terms of exam pricing, so all the exam pricing details are available on the FMI website. You may or may not know this, but via SF Education and your affiliation with them, you are eligible for a 40% discount code to the FMI exams. So be sure to take advantage of that. Reach out to Alexander or Roman for more information on the discount code. We also, as I said, reduced fees for candidates who wish to rewrite. There is also an extremely generous deferral policy. That's all available on the FMI website. And finally, there's tiered pricing for the FMI exams based on when you register. So it is better to register early to take advantage of the pricing. Finally, and I'll just touch on this quickly, as mentioned for PwC, especially the FMI does a lot of private exams for small teams. If you or other groups, if you are interested in that, please send us an email. Again, our emails will be in this deck, and we'll connect you with more information. Are there any questions on that content so far?
And actually, quite a lot.
Okay.
Quite a lot. Yes. Thanks a lot, Julian. It was really interesting for us. And about the questions. At first, at the top, Kirill asks, does the exam take 4 hours without interruption? How about food and toilet? And or you need to sit in front of a webcam turned on and not to go anywhere and do nothing?
That's a great question. So we actually recommend, and I'll get into these resources in a second, in our study guide, that you are able to complete the exam in 3 hours. We think candidates who are successful can do 3 hours. Candidates are not awarded extra time for bathroom breaks, to grab water. No extra time is awarded for that. So we do, again, recommend you can do it in 3 hours, and then the 4 hours gives you enough, an extra hour to review your exam, check if there's anything, pretty up the formatting, and accommodates for those breaks that you might have taken.
Thanks a lot. I think we can try another question. Will I be given a certificate if I don't have any working experience in financial modeling?
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Because again, all we're certifying is financial modeling ability. So if you have that ability, you get the certificate. We're not so concerned with work experience and the like, at least for levels 1 and 2.
Okay, yeah, don't worry about your working experience.
Yeah, it's because for CFA, it's always there's always a lot of confusion with our clients. They ask whether, okay, so because there's certain rules, you either have like you have to have three or so years of experience, and then there's a difference between getting the designation or being able to actually just register for the exam, and there's a difference in that. So here, as we said before, you don't need any experience to register for the exam, and once you pass it, you don't need any work experience to actually get the certificate.
Yes, absolutely.
And this fact again proves that FMI exam is easier than CFA exam, as we said, as we arranged together.
Yeah, absolutely. And the feedback we get is it's easier and more practical in many cases, because it actually is more of an on-the-job skill.
Yes. Can we try another question? Another question from Igor.
Sure, we'll do one more and then we'll keep moving, just because I want to show you some of these learning resources and such.
One more question. Oh, sure. 1 moment. Do you have any data on average salary increase after completing FMI? What about the money?
That is a great question about the money. It's always about the money. What a great question. We actually don't right now. We do have a rough indication of the titles and careers that people go into after that, but it's something we're working on, and we hope to release this soon. We are starting these surveys of collecting this information, and we do hope to release that number in a bit.
Yeah, I would also add, because you are represented in many countries, you'll probably do like a percentage increase instead of actual dollar amounts. And secondly, I guess it also matters where the student is at this point in time. Yeah, because if it's sort of junior analyst position, and then he can have a much higher percentage increase than, for example, a CFO or some financial manager with a few years of experience. So that also depends on what you already have at this point in time.
Alexander, that is a great thought. And the next time we meet on this, I'm going to invite you, okay? And you can you can share your thoughts with you on how we'll tackle it. All right.
Just tell us a date and time and place.
Perfect. Awesome. Can't wait.
So can we launch Excel file, Julian and Tim?
Yeah. So I'll just keep going through a couple tips.
Yeah.
So just in terms of preparing for the level 1 exam. So the level 1's the entry point. Again, based on that survey that we did at the beginning, this is where a lot of you would come in. And again, you are required to do level 1 before you do the level 2 exam. So here's how I think you should prepare. So this first step is to start with the skills checklist. So I'm just going to pull that up. So can you see my screen?
Sure.
This skills checklist. So perfect. So here are all the skills that you need to pass the level 1. So I would literally go through and just tick it. If you're good at if functions tick. Do you know and or tick, right? And then anything that's missing is where you need to improve. The next thing I would do is look at the AFM body of knowledge. So for each level, CFM and AFM, the FMI issues this body of knowledge document to registered candidates. You need to be registered for the exam to receive this document. And what it does is it goes in depth in the different skills we suggest to build a financial model. So it talks about the principles a little bit. Again, and we'll just speed through it, how to plan a model, the kinds of questions that you should ask, how to design your model, how to format your different cells. There's a bit about printing, headers and footers. It's got a ton of information here. And the thing with this information is it's it's one thing to read it and understand it, but you also have to practice it. You have to implement it. It has to be second nature for you to build the models with these concepts in mind. And once you can, your models will improve drastically. It'll be so valuable to you. So the next document we have is an AFM study guide. This is something for candidates who want to self-prepare and not take a course such as those offered by SF Education or another approved training provider. One of the things you can do is you can follow this 8-week guide that prepares you, or you may want to do both, which I absolutely recommend as well, to prepare you for the AFM exam. And there is also kind of in this study document a strategy for exam day, how to approach it, and some things to think about. So those are some of the preparation resources. In a second, we're going to get into a little more about the sample exams that are available to you. And one other resource on the FMI website, there are optional readings that you might want to check out to make you a better financial modeler. These are absolutely not required in order to pass the exams. They're just things that you may want to look at if that's how you prefer to learn. So a lot of great resources available to you. We're going to get into a few more of those. Again, there's training courses available. And I will now pass it off to Tim, and he will talk through some of the sample exams.
Perfect. Thanks, Julian. We've run through and talked about high level about what this should look like, how, what you've got to do. And I know we've given you a lot of information. What we always find to be really helpful is to sort of boil it down and say, okay, if I'm going to write the AFM exam, what do I really need to do? And so we're going to take a couple of minutes and just kind of go through that, because we've talked about format, we've talked about materials, grading process. We want to give you kind of a concrete example of what's required to pass the AFM exam, because that's the entry point. Julian, do you mind pulling up the case study?
Absolutely.
And Julian's just going to pull up here a case study. This is one that was used for a previous exam. Page 1 just has a bunch of instructions. So let's skip over that because that's not really all that crucial. But what you're going to get is basically a 2-page case study. We always pick a business that's a simple business that everybody kind of understands. So think about something like a railway. Think about a retail store. Think about a manufacturing business, right? Things that people can understand. Here we've got a retail store, and people are asked to build a model that's a 5-year forecast period. As we go down here, Julian, you can see there's a little bit of information on sales or turnover, i.e. what the revenue for the company looks like, some key assumptions. Some key assumptions on operating costs, CapEx, depreciation, working capital. Every company pays tax, so we've got some stuff on tax. And then there's some key assumptions on debt and equity as well in there. And if you think about the set of financial statements for a company, those are kind of the major categories. So the case study gives you information that you're going to need to incorporate in the model. This is an Excel-based exam. So Julian, do you mind opening up the Excel spreadsheet as well? So when you register or when you're sitting for an AFM exam, you get that case study, which is kind of 2 pages, and then you get an Excel file that looks like this. We need your candidate name and number, which is easy. And then, Julian, on the model tab, this is what you get. You get 3 years of historical data. You can see, or actually, Julian, do you mind just going right to the top of that Excel sheet? Perfect.
Already.
Here's the income statement, 3 years of data. And Julian, as we just scroll down through this, there's the cash flow statement. And then as we go down, a balance sheet for the company. So with that worksheet file that you have here and the case study, you now have everything that's necessary to build a fully integrated 3-statement model. And now you get to do it, and you've got 4 hours. And this is tough. It's a challenge. I'm not going to lie. And so you have to be really comfortable with accounting. You have to be really comfortable with finance. And you also have to be comfortable with Excel. The FMI website shows a whole bunch of different sample models that we've had people build, and sort of gives an indication of what best practices would be. We're not fussed about the format or the style. We allow you to use your own creativity to do this. But what you have to do is build a fully integrated model that forecasts out the business for 5 years. We thought it might be helpful to show you what one of, and we've had thousands of people write this exam over the years, but thought it would be really helpful to show you what one AFM candidate submitted. So we've picked this one exam. It was a woman in Vancouver who put it together. And you remember what we started with, that one tab in an Excel sheet that had that had historical income statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet. This is what she built in 4 hours. And this is kind of, if you can build this in 4 hours, you will pass with flying colors. This is a really well-built exam. Julian, do you mind going to the cover page? So we always encourage people, a model needs to work as a financial presentation. Start with a cover page. Simple, easy, but put it in. Julian, do you mind jumping to the summary page? We always think that if you're going to present a model to a client, the first thing the client wants to know is, what is the answer? What is the conclusion? So really nice to have a summary page. And this individual just picked a number of key metrics out of the model. And you can see she shows what happens in the best case and in the worst case. So a summary tab, really great idea. Julian, let's jump to the assumptions tab, please. You remember that 2-page case study that we had earlier? Well, you've got to take all of those assumptions that were in the case study and put them into Excel. And so what this individual did was take all the assumptions that was in the case study, put them in here. Really nice design and layout that she chose to use. This would be something that would give you a lot of confidence if you were showing it to a boss or a client. Right? So we have the assumptions there. Julian, do you mind jumping to the scenario page now? Perfect. When we think about building models, we also think that it's really important to build in the ability to do sensitivity analysis. Because people might look at your model and say, that's great, but you know what? Those growth rates, they're a little too high. Could you rerun the model using lower growth rates? Or I don't think we're going to sell quite as much product. Could you rerun the model using slightly lower numbers? So really nice to have the ability to run different scenarios in a model. And what we've done here in the model builder has identified what we would call the key drivers in a model. These are the things that are going to have a biggest material impact on the cash flow generating capability of the business. These are things that management can't forecast with accuracy. And these are things that management can't control. So these are things that would make great key drivers for this business in this case study. And now is where it all comes together. So Julian, do you mind jumping to the model tab here? One of the things that we always like to do is build schedules for the different components that go into a model. You know the income statement starts with revenue. Rather than trying to forecast out revenue in one line on the income statement, we say build a schedule that allows me to forecast out revenue. And we think about revenue, not just taking last year's revenue and growing it at 2% or 3% or an inflationary number, but understand that revenue is always a function of how many units did I sell at what price. If that's how it works in the real world, then that's how we have to model it. So revenue, we always think about how many units did I sell at what price. This woman did a really nice job of building up a revenue schedule based on the information in the case. Julian, do you mind just going down to the cost schedule next? Same idea. Every company is going to have costs. Everybody knows the two types of costs are fixed costs and they're variable costs. So as we model it out, need to think about the fact that a company will have fixed costs and variable costs. This is what gives rise to operating leverage in a company. Because if revenue goes up by 10%, well, your fixed costs don't actually change because they're fixed. That gives rise to operating leverage. Again, she's done a really nice job. Nice, simple, clean schedule. Julian, can we just go down a little bit here? This is the income statement. What she did was to take that 3 years of historical data that we had in the model, and you can see now she's forecasting out a 5-year forecast from there. Okay. Nice, clean, something that you'd be happy to present to a client. Let's go down. Julian, we got to turn iterations off, but that's okay. Or turn iterations on here. Yeah, perfect. And there's the cash flow statement. Again, took what was 3 years of historical data, forecasted it out. Let's go down to the balance sheet, if you don't mind. And they've built the model vertically, which we're a big fan of. Mm-hmm. So again, balance sheet is great. One of the key things on the balance sheet, if you go down a little further, Julian, is the balance sheet actually balances and it's not plugged, right? In the real world, you can't take a financial model to a client if the balance sheet doesn't balance, right? So that's something that we'll look for in the exam. And then Julian, if we just kind of go down lower, you can see there's a series of schedules. There's a depreciation schedule. The idea is calculate depreciation in its own schedule, link it back in to the financial statements. And Julian, we'll just kind of go through here quickly. You know, there's the working capital schedule. Same thing, build it, link it back in. And as we start to go down, what's going to come next will probably be a tax schedule. Then there's the debt and the interest schedules that apply there. And if we keep going down, last but not least are the equity schedules for the business. And so this is, and I've seen a lot of exam submissions that come from candidates. We've picked one of the best that we've ever seen. This individual did a great job. Everything from the formulas are working well to make sure the balance sheet balances. The design, the layout is a very clear, professional, communicates a lot of confidence that this individual knew what she was doing. So this is one of the best models that we've seen submitted, but wanted to show it to you to give you an example of what is possible. And so if you're really comfortable with Excel, accounting, financial modeling, you can pull all this together and you can do it within a 4-hour window. Julian, I think I'm going to maybe stop there in terms of walking through. I guess there's a couple of other slides too, Julian. Do you mind just jumping back to the presentation deck? And so we kind of walked through the case study, a worksheet file, and an actual exam so people could get a sense of what's possible. And just a couple sort of wrap-up comments here, and then we'll open it up to questions because I want to leave some time. Julian, the next slide, please. These are the things that we see sometimes people have issues with. Revenues, we talked about that. Always think about revenues. How many units did I sell at what price, right? Price times volume. Costs, talked about splitting the fixed and the variable costs, because every company has those. Linking to the financial statements, right? Again, great example of make sure you do the work in schedules, not on the statements. Some of the schedules, like the tax schedule, we recommend you do that later, because depending on what your EBITDA is, depending on what your earnings before tax number is, will impact what the amount of tax that you pay. So there should be a logical order to go through. And capital structure is probably the last one that we would recommend from a building perspective. I think that kind of covers everything, Julian, that I was hoping to cover today. Are there any questions from anyone in the room? I guess maybe now would be a good time to sort of think about some questions.
Actually, yeah, there are a lot of them, yes.
So either people are really interested or really confused. I'm going to go with really interested.
Really interesting because our polls, in our poll, we have 2% that says I am an FMI certification holder. 2%.
Probably Tim himself pressed that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to the end, to the culmination of this webinar. So about the questions, can I ask only one question, Tim, Julian? Mm-hmm. One question. Okay. One moment. What is the difference between FMI and FMVA?
That's a fantastic question. Tim, do you mind if I?
You can talk that. Yeah.
Perfect. So, it's from a different company, the Corporate Finance Institute, I believe. So, the biggest difference we point to is that the FMI certifications are an evaluation of financial modeling ability. So training is not our focus. Our focus is on validating your ability. So you'll see there's much lower pass rates in the FMI exams because obviously candidates have not displayed that ability. We understand that the FMVA certification is a little bit more of a training program. So in some ways, it might prepare you for the FMI exam. In some ways, it's also not as focused, so I hear, on financial modeling. So I'm not sure how good preparation is. I'd recommend probably instead you take an SF education training course instead. But yes, the FMI exams have lower pass rates and are there to validate financial modeling proficiency.
The other thing I would say to add to that is there's a difference in the rigor attached to those. My understanding of the FMVA is it is a multiple choice test. And so you can take that and you can take it multiple times. The FMI is actually building something in a spreadsheet. It's harder, no question about it. We built it to be harder because our belief is if something is difficult and there's rigor attached to it, there's more value attached to it. So when we went through and created this, we looked to the CFA Institute, which, and I'm a CFA charter holder, hardest thing I've done.
Yep.
Is the gold standard in sort of finance education globally. That's how we were sort of thinking about this and going through. And so that's why the exam gets offered only a few times a year. FMVA, I think you can write the multiple choice test whenever you want. And I would say it comes down to the candidate and what's of most interest or value to you. As Julian said, they are different. I'm biased, but that shouldn't come in.
Thanks a lot, Julian and Tim.
So, actually, if you don't mind, Roman, I can take it from here because I see some questions like down the thread. Somebody asked whether there are any common standards in financial modeling in general, like IFRS and accounting, or is it more dependent on business practices?
Yeah, I would say there are a few organizations who have put out things in terms of some standards, but there is nothing that is universal like GAAP would be or IFRS would be. And so part of what the FMI is to build a collection of people who build models and think about what we think are best practices or best standards. If you look at the advisory committee for FMI, we have people from globally around the world who participate in this, but there is no definitive go-to standard. But we also think that kind of makes sense because as an individual, you should have the ability to use a little bit of creativity as you put together and build models. Some things shouldn't change. Revenue is always a function of price times volume. And so that's the way we sort of think about it.
Yeah, I know there are F1, F9, I believe in Europe, these guys have standards for modeling.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And F1, F9 is one of the approved training providers for us as well, too, right?
Yeah.
So can we voice more questions, or we should go further?
I would like to take like one more. Well, it's more like people are actually asking us about the programs, and I just want to clarify. So there are two similar questions. One is whether when people take our financial modeling or related courses, do they automatically get the certificate? No, you guys actually need to take the exam. And the other one was so our courses, they do not specifically prepare for the FMI exam. It's just because they're so in depth and we cover so many topics there. A while ago, we started searching for institutes that can issue international certifications that can attest a certain level of mastery. So. And we actually found out about FMI, and what we decided to do is, okay, since we already have this much content and this much in-depth training, why not make it available to our students to actually prove that they are, they're able to be great financial modelers on an international level. So we are not specifically preparing for the FMI exam. It's just if you take one of our courses where FMI is framed as a partner, you will likely be able to pass the exam. But of course, as the guys mentioned before, once you register for the exam, you'll get preparation materials specifically for the FMI exam. And yes, our format of our learning format is we have obviously video lessons, we have webinars, we have online cases. So there are different things, and obviously if you're a full-time employee, you can always study during weekends or in the evening. We are very flexible with that. That's answering Dimitri's and I believe it was Igor somebody else's question.
I see. And Svetlana asks, is it possible to share this wonderful model as shown as of the best scene within the exam? I think the answer is not, because it's a confidential model. Am I right? Am I right, gentlemen?
Yeah, just to build on this was an exam submission from one of the candidates. She has no idea that we just showed it to you. So we do not have permission to distribute it to everyone. But on the FMI website, there are what we call sample examples of models and sample case studies as you go through the process. So those sample models and sample case studies look very much like the real thing that we just went through here. And that would give you a great base to start prepping for the exam if you're interested in self-study as opposed to taking a course. So there's lots of information out there on the website of great, well-built, well-designed models.
Oh, just a moment. In our chat, one lady writes, "How dare you? It's my model. Why?" Her name Jane Oliver. Jane Oliver. Oh, it's just joking. I'm kidding.
So
yeah.
Yeah. So for just one question for me. Before you guys had like certain dates when set aside for the exams. How does it work now?
So I can speak to that. So that's still the process. We still do have exam dates. We've actually, due to the virtual format, added an additional exam date a year where you can write the AFM in July. We're not sure what the world's going to look like in 2022. So we don't, as a result, we haven't issued our exam dates for 2022 yet. It might be in a slightly different format. So stay tuned. And again, the best way to receive updates about the FMI is to follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter, and such, and then you'll be notified of these changes that might happen in 2022. But for 2021, we do have the exam dates laid out, and they're all available on our website.
And Julian, I think is it April 24th this year, July 31st, and I'm going to get this one wrong, but I'm going to say October 20th.
Yeah, I think it's 24th or 26th or something on the Saturday of that week.
It's the 23rd. I see it. If you guys want me, I can send the link in the chat.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Thank you, Alexander.
So we don't have another questions in chat. Oh, I see promo. And we can resume. We can resume our presentation.
Perfect.
I think that takes us to the end there.
Awesome. So Tim's going to say thank you in Russian in a second, because his Russian is much better than mine. One point I just wanted to make, just hearing some of the conversation, is just imagine also the difference for employers in having a certification that was difficult to achieve, what that says about your ability, that it actually validates your financial modeling ability. The second piece was also imagine what it does for your skills development to have to practice to achieve and pass an exam. We say around 100 hours is how much it is to prepare for the level 1 exam. I hear for the level 1 CFA, I'm not a CFA, unfortunately, at least yet, is 300 hours. So we say around 100 for the level 1. But just imagine what that does for employers and skills validation. And I will pass it on to Tim to say thank you for joining us today.
I have had the pleasure of going to Russia. It was many years ago. I picked up a few words, but not many. And so apparently Julian wants to hear me say spasibo. So thank you all for coming out today, enjoying the session. I will turn it over to Alexander and Roman if there's any sort of closing remarks that you gentlemen have.
Yeah, so I in the chat I sent the link to the registration page, because a few guys asked what the pricing is on that, and as I mentioned before, if you're an early bird, you'll get a special treatment, and also we send a promo code for SF Education. And I believe it works. If it doesn't work, just let us know. And it's obviously we're probably gonna put it later in our into our messages after the webinar. And obviously, everyone who's already one of our students in a related course, whether it's financial modeling, investments, or accounting, if you want to take the exam, we'll also make the promo code available to you. so you can use it at a later date. Yeah, I believe most of the other questions we already took them. And if you guys have more questions or we didn't answer any of your questions, you can always contact us, and we'll make sure you get the information. What else?
What else? I think our spectators can send all these questions after the webinar through Google form via the link in description of this video. So Alexander, I think we can say great thanks to our guests, to Julian and the team for this great webinar. Thanks for coming to this meetup. Because we don't speak meeting because it's a dangerous word. It's a dangerous word. It's a dangerous word in Russian humor. We can speak. We can discuss it some later. So it was a great, beneficial, and dynamic event. Dynamic event. And as the poll said, we have 58% that I'm familiar with the FMI, and we hope that this number will be much lower and the next webinar in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Roman. Thank you, Alexander.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and we hope that the FMI designation will become as popular in the world as CFA or some other designations that pretty much anyone knows.
Absolutely, thank you. It will be. Just give it some time.
Yeah, we'll make all in our forces to make FMI certification more popular and more working with our courses and with our webinars. Let's make FMI working to people.
Just let's make it great again.
Great again. Okay. It's a dangerous phrase, I think, already in America.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we should be wrapping up. Guys, everyone, thanks for joining in. And if you're watching it as a recording, please make sure you leave questions in the comment section, and we will make sure that we answer them promptly.
So thanks a lot to everyone. Have a good evening, have a nice weekend, and until next time, I think. Bye.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
Goodbye.